The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 7th and final webinar of our fraud month. Today, we're going to be addressing fraud in a post-pandemic era. But before we get started, as always, please ask questions. This webinar is set up to be engaging with you, the audience. So the more questions we get from you, the more we can have a conversation between the four of us you see on the screen. And we'll do introductions very shortly. But I just want to reiterate there, we're going to throw a couple of statistics out there. We're going to talk about some ongoing fraud issues. We're going to talk about some best practices, but ultimately we're going to end up where we want to hear from you. Brainstorm a little bit, look into the future, what solutions are out there, what do you have as best practices, etc. So again, this is to be an engaging session. So please use the question on the toolbar on the right and ask away as we get started here shortly. As always, I am Cornelius Hutton, Director of Revenue Integrity here at ARC. Been with ARC for coming up to 6 years now, been with IATA prior to that, and I've lived and worked around the globe in many different areas as well. And I'll hand over to Doug, and then we'll go down the line for introductions.
All right. Thank you. I'm Doug Nass, and I'm the Director of Fraud Investigations. Been doing fraud work at ARC for the past 27 years, so I've seen a lot of things, experienced a lot of things, and hopefully we can share some insights into what's been going on and where it might be moving in the future. So on to Tony.
And this is Tony Ash from Worldpay by FIS. 20 years in airline payments and a lot of energy in revenue integrity with fraud solutions and resolutions and such. Glad to be here with this team and the audience.
And my name is Maarten. I'm the CEO of Perseuss, which is a data sharing platform used by a lot of airlines and larger OTAs.
And we touched a little bit on that solution yesterday as well during our ARC Risk Check webinar with Voter from Perseuss. I'm being told here on the questions that people can't hear us, or at least one person is not able to hear us. I hope everybody else can hear us. If not, please raise your hand or drop us a message so we can know that the volume or the audio is working for you. So as we move along, today's discussion is going to be focusing mainly on a summary of 2020's historical chargeback situation that we all encountered with the settlement systems basically going in reverse, and what that the lack of travel and the bans and government restrictions have had, the impact that it had on the industry. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the rapid recovery and how that's impacting current state and fraud, especially. Talk about 2021 and 2022 fraud activity, vulnerabilities at the travel agency level, and then looking at emerging tools and mitigation, and sort of a forward look into what the world of payments might look like, what the world of collaboration, communication, etc. could look like going forward into 2023 and beyond. But I'm going to hand over here to Tony, who's just going to give us a bit of an update here on some numbers.
Thank you, Cornelius. Well, 2020, we all know, was quite a historical period in dealing with the pandemic. Acquirers, issuers, airlines, travel agents, community itself, everybody had challenges during this very unprecedented time right here. So as you can see, there's some very interesting stats on the screen here, whereby we witnessed $38 billion worth of chargebacks show itself in about a 6 to 8 month time frame, and essentially crippled the market from there. Many of the airline carriers were able to resolve some of these with vouchers, much in the way of cash as well too. But there's one very interesting dynamic that showed itself, and that has given risen for new tools as well too. And I think we ought to pause for a moment on this topic of double dipping, because there are many stories where people were able to achieve vouchers, able to achieve cash refunds as well too, because it's so easy to get that refund off the bank website and such. And so maybe I'd like to pause there and open the dialogue up for that topic a little bit right there, please.
Yeah, Tony, 2020 was unprecedented. As you mentioned, a shocking amount of money was going in the wrong direction. One would say even the ARC settlement system was not set up to handle such a vast amount of money going in the opposite direction as what it was set up for. But yeah, it was a challenge for everyone. And one of the concerns that I have moving forward is I think a lot of customers out there got a little too comfortable of, rather than dealing with their travel agent and or their airline, to just charge it back, just wash their hands of it rather than worry about, you know, getting their money at some point down the line. And we know a lot of people didn't want vouchers. They didn't want that credit that could be used in the future, and they were claiming fraud. And my big worry is people got maybe a little too comfortable moving forward with, if something goes wrong, I'm just going to charge it back. That does not bode well for the industry.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the easy way out, right? People were impatient. They didn't want to wait for their money. They didn't want to wait for a refund. They didn't, you know, and to your point, they didn't want the voucher or future date travel either. So, you know, they got trigger happy, and it was an easy way to get their money back, right? So, but with that, of course, you know, the issue around double dipping. I mean, Tony, you showing statistics here of 9 to 10% of that, the losses here are related to double dipping, and that is just a lack of communication, right? And that, for me, is, you know, something that could have been resolved if, you know, if everybody, and we said this back in 2020 in one of our webinars, and we said, you know, talk to your customers, make sure you know what they're doing, make sure you engage with them, and if they get a refund, let them tell you they got a refund from the airline or future date travel or voucher or whatever that might be, so that when that chargeback does come back in, you have you have something to show for it, or to at least confirm that, you know, it's an invalid chargeback that shouldn't exist. But unfortunately, I think things hit us so fast during COVID that it was, you know, every day was a new learning curve for everyone. But I think looking at that and using that as a learning curve, I think communication is essential within our industry and with all the stakeholders across the payment infrastructure, the merchant infrastructure, agency, consumer, and travel, all the travel partners as well. So, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end, so I won't belabor it right here now, but definitely an area that needs to be improved.
It often takes a crisis to flush out the inefficiencies and gaps, and we witnessed a number of crises in our past in this industry, going all the way back to 9/11. And as a result of that, we learned where we were failing, where we need to get stronger in communications and collaboration and data points, and sharing data and information to bridge these situations. So we've witnessed a number of tools come out to help bridge this gap thus far, or at least tie some of these data points together between vouchers and cash and unflown tickets thus far, to make sure that they're not double issued or things of that nature. I think one of the other things as I travel around and deal with the airlines and some of their headquarters as well too, I believe that they are looking now to be a bit more passenger centric than they were before, because it would have been advantageous had the consumers contacted their point of contact, be it the airline or be it the OTA or travel agent, rather than just, pardon me, let me back up and say sometimes they had problems getting a hold of someone and being able to resolve the issue because of the overwhelming amount of calls, and then the default position is they go back to their bank website, click the button for cancellation. and then eventually it hopefully it reconciles and catches up adequately from there. But the whole scenario cost the airline industry itself over 200 billion in losses in a 2.5-year time frame. We've seen record losses before in the past of 11 billion and 22 billion, but now it rolls up to an extraordinary number. And then we have to look at the entire travel ecosystem as well too, and every supportive player that has a role in keeping this industry propped up and the people on the move and fulfilling their dreams and their vacations, including our travel agents and our OTAs as well too, and that global economy. So it's estimated that it impacted the global economy by about $4 trillion just in the travel sector. That's not other elements of the economy as well too.
That's a big hit. All right. So Tony, you want to go into the rapid recovery here? And I know you need to maybe take a pause here and rest that voice.
Good, thank you.
But I don't know if Martin, you have anything that you want to add? Don't want to throw you under the bus, but you know, anything you want to add? Yeah.
Well, I think that everybody has seen that last year the recovery was tremendous, and I think that everybody also realizes that next year it will probably be a bit different. But looking at the recovery in this year, and also not just the normal transactions, but also the fraud that came back during this year, I think it's interesting. I think that what we've seen at a lot of the airlines is the original fraud teams were already doing other stuff, working on vouchers, working on refunds, and all sorts of other things, and no longer being highly involved in the risk. New risk teams being in place that were not equipped well enough to handle all the fraud that was coming their way. And I think especially Doug has seen quite a lot of that in the last year. Well, you see that the traffic counts are quite high. We don't have a full overview of how big the actual fraud percentages are at the moment, but all indications show that there's quite some fraud coming back as well.
Yeah, what's nice driving that recovery, what we didn't see happen a lot in 2021, well, we saw the leisure market really skyrocket back. It was that corporate that was lagging behind in the recovery, but finally in 2022, earlier this year, we saw that component, that really important one to the bottom lines for so many airlines, is that recovery. So that is well on its way. But yeah, as you mentioned, all the fraudsters that we were chasing from 2019 into 2020, before everything fell off a cliff, almost all of them are back. All the old schemes, whether it is just the traditional credit card fraud, corporate booking, all the unauthorized ticketing, unfortunately. And
yeah.
Here we want to talk about a real problem. It's been a problem worldwide, but it had taken a hiatus between 2014 and about 2020. And then in 2020, it started to creep back into the ARC world of a fraudster who his seeming specialty is to blast out phishing emails to the travel agency community. And along the right-hand side, we see an actual phishing email, parts of it. You can see that it claims to come from Sabre, but when you look at the email address, it is infos@bootst.info, so not sabre.com. And what it is doing, it is enticing the staff to click on that link in the box down below, which will take them to a site controlled by the fraudster, and he's requesting that they upload their GDS login credentials. And this is really ensnaring dozens and dozens and dozens of travel agencies in the US. I know it's not just a US issue. There are issues overseas as well. And this one is claiming to be, you know, they've just gone in and copied and pasted the Sabre logo, unfortunately, right there. And they're asking, you know, this is claiming it's a Sabre technology upgrade notification. That one we see over and over again. We've seen another variation, which included when there was an NDC technology upgrade notification as well. So it doesn't always have to come from a GDS. It could come from an airline as well. But the bottom line is when you are going in and clicking on that link, giving up your GDS login credentials, that fraudster's now, we call it harvesting credentials. And he comes in in the US, it's in the middle of the night, so no one's at the agency. He uses those login credentials to remotely access the system. You know, think of him as a black market travel agent, and he's got customers. And oftentimes they're already at the airport. The minute he's issuing these tickets, the passengers are often they're checking into the flight, and it goes from being issued to being under airport control within minutes, an hour. And it gives it's really difficult for anyone to stop this when the time frame of the fraud is so shortened from the GDS detecting the suspicious activity on the account to people flying. So it's really shocking. And oftentimes it happens over the weekend. It's no, you know, we're used to it at ARC where we're coming in and there's 4, 5, 6 of these incidents happening on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday evening. $300,000-$400,000 worth of tickets have been issued. That's how dire this situation is. So it's very time consuming for us to corral this and get it under control. This is
a nice example as well, Doug, where we trying to collaborate, right, amongst all parties involved in this, because it's not the travel agent's the one who's being hit, but we're trying to incorporate our communication to the GDS and the airlines affected as well, you know, so that there is a solution or potential for a solution to the travel agency that might have inadvertently clicked on this link and now been defrauded from tickets. So, you know, just one of the areas that we're trying to build out on our collaboration and, you know, support to the travel agency community is making sure that all those parties are involved, making sure you as a travel agency know what you need to do immediately after you find out that you were compromised, and how to respond to those and issues, and how to reach to your GDS and who to reach out to at the airline. If you don't have that relationship, we try and help out as best we can in that scenario. And I just want to quote this statistic, Tony, that you provided here, is that, you know, approximately 90% of all emails sent worldwide are spam, spoof, or phishing attempts. That is just ridiculous. A high percentage of traffic that's coming your way, and you as an individual have to try and filter out through each one of these attacks, you know, which one is real, which one is safe, and which one's not, right? So, and those, I mean, it goes back to your IT departments or you yourself ultimately to make sure you have the proper spam filters in, you know, firewalls up, et cetera, to ensure you keep yourself safe from these, you know, hundreds of thousands of emails floating out there trying to deceive you and make you click on the wrong link.
Yeah, and we tell agents, you know, we've been advised by the GDSs that they will not send out emails, official emails that they send. that require you to log in through an embedded link and provide your login credentials. It's super important that people are aware. The GDSs do not send those types. They may have an official communication with a link in it, but it will send you to a public-facing site where they're not requesting your login credentials. That's key. And we're doing webinars like this. We spoke about this issue on the first webinar of the September fraud series. We do fraud alerts out to the agency community, multiple. We put it out in other means, agents that know about IAR, that we put a warning. I think I looked yesterday morning and it was a big warning, like alert all of every last staff that has login credentials to be aware of these phishing emails. So it's just shocking. It's really caused a lot of financial havoc in the agency community, and it's not pretty. But
this very practice has been taking place in criminal and fraudster behavior for over a decade in other sectors. In other words, chase the lower level municipalities. Them quicker because they don't have the firewalls, the budget, the staff, and then get in just as quick rather than hitting a larger stateside or Fed side government entity. And they're just deploying, in this instance, the very same practice to the most vulnerable of those in our community that don't have the budgets and the staff to sort this out.
And the thing is, there's always that they create that sense of urgency, right? So you better do this now, or we'll shut you down, or you're going to have to pay X amount of money, and so on. And then there was the Microsoft scheme a couple of years back as well, especially big in the UK, where people had to say, oh, you've got to restart your computer or reboot your computer, you've been infected with a virus or something like that, right? So yeah, to your point, Tony, it's not nothing new, but it's just the way it's packaged just might be a little bit different to what we used to. But the end result is always, they want to get into your system, they want to put malware on it, they want to scrape your passwords, they want to scrape whatever they can out of your system and commit fraud. So be vigilant.
But the good thing is that the solutions are there as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the advantage from having a 10-year delay on other sectors, right?
True.
Yeah.
True.
And it's not only, think about this, as we mentioned, there could be other types of fraud going on. The ransomware is from phishing emails. The business email compromise, which is by far, the most expensive, most damaging fraud, according to the FBI, the Internet Crime Complaint Center. It's ungodly amounts of money from the business email compromise. So, you have to be wary not only in your business world when you're working, but your personal world. When people are looking for your banking information, got to be vigilant. Texts, emails, whatever it is. So it's for everyday life. So yeah, that is a major problem. So all right.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just phishing emails. I mean, just to expand a little bit here on the frauds that we continue seeing. Of course, on the consumer side, there's the fake bogus agencies, who would drive AdWord campaigns, and you'd have people do a Siri request and say, hey Siri, call XYZ airline. And of course, Siri doesn't know any better, and she's going to call the first number at the top, first the 1-800 number, and that 1-800 number is redirecting you to a call center somewhere in a foreign world, and that call center is going to pretend that they're an airline. There was I think it was on CNBC earlier this week, September 22nd. There was an actual nice little article around this, how Siri and I don't know what the other one, Google and all those guys, Alexa and so on, all being duped into calling these fraudsters, but also the human, the individual sitting there with a phone, they put in they type in, I want to fly, I want to talk to someone at XYZ airline, and they type that in, and the first one that comes up is 1-800, and they click it without looking at the finer details. It's like there's an ad. Normally you'll see in a very small fine print at the top of the message, or where the phone number is, that it's going to say ad. You know, it's clearly going to state that it's an ad. So when you see that ad, start looking at the address. Is it truly XYZ airline, or is this John Smith's fraud activity call center out in somewhere in foreign land? So you can help yourself as a consumer. Obviously, you can help yourself by looking at those things. But then, unfortunately, it becomes a black mark on the agency world, right? So being an accredited agency is essential. Being able to project to your consumer that you are a legitimate entity and so on, that helps us as an agency environment, and also the airlines to justify to our consumers that we are legitimate businesses, right? And but unfortunately, you've got these bogus agencies that are driving a lot of the fraud, a lot of the issues that we see today. There's misrepresentation happening on the airline side. You know, it's an all overtaking issue that's affecting us. You know, in addition to the phishing emails that we have to deal with. But you know, there's just a myriad of continuation of fraud that we're experiencing, including the credit card fraud, which is traditionally being the biggest area for us. But you know, it's just coming in different disguises and different angles at us. I want to also just take this quick opportunity to say, look at the screen. I don't think we're going to read through every one of those. Those are some good best practices that anybody can apply at any point in time. But I also want to invite everybody to start putting forward those questions, please. If we want to continue this conversation, we need your input as well. And you know, so that would be very helpful. If anybody can hear noise behind me, I apologize. It's turned into a bit of a madhouse over here, so my apologies. And I'll hand over to my colleagues and go on mute for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In addition, you mentioned, you know, we traditionally are set up at ARC. We deal mostly with credit card fraud. That's typically, historically, what we've been doing. But in talking about the AdWord campaigns that you were talking about, where some of these fly-by-night websites, you know, you go in and search for Delta, and the official Delta site is like fourth in the line. There's three alleged travel agents up above them. But in talking to over many years with the fraud reps, it's not even just traditional credit card fraud that they see. It is a frequent flyer, miles being stolen out of customers' accounts when they don't realize they're not talking to a Delta rep. It's one of these fly-by-night call centers and websites. Vouchers, stealing people's vouchers, giving them to other customers, gift card fraud occurring as well. And those are elements that are hidden from ARC, but it is happening in the travel world. So it's not just credit card fraud, it's all this other myriad of schemes that are occurring from the same sources. And so it makes it really challenging for any one entity to do anything about it. It's that collaboration that we always talk about. You know, you can't suffer this stuff alone. You've got to reach out to others in the industry to see what they're doing. So it's a long process, but very well worthwhile.
Most particularly in light of the fact that this will never go away. So you shut down sites, you shut down bad actors. In that game of whack-a-mole, another one just pops right back up, or another three pop up, or whatever. But it will never go away. And last week I was at a travel co-branded session with about 80 members of the banking community, the airline brands, and hotels and others. And when as to your point, Doug, that you mentioned on loyalty theft, if you will, loyalty points and cash in there, unfortunately, many people do not manage their loyalty account like they do their personal checking account, or like they might do their credit card statement as well too. So it could be a month or 2 or 3 before they realize they're missing some points.
Yeah.
That what they thought that they may have had. And then secondly, when it comes to the resolution of making the customer whole, there's no chargeback placement for that, and perhaps a good thing, but anyway. So the airline brand or the hotel brand must give the points back to the loyalty member to keep them in good standings, and there's no place for them to get that money as well too. So that has been low-hanging and very, very painful fruit to this travel industry as they've been capitalizing on these loyalty points and frequent flyer programs.
But this also is a decision that these organizations make by not mandating, for instance, two-factor authentication. And I fully understand that they don't do it because it's painstaking, but in this day and age, not having two-factor authentication.
I mean, I think that's the easiest way to go, right? Two-factor authentication. I mean, we see it today in our daily lives. I think the old argument that people don't like it, it's fallen to the wayside. I mean, you get it on your banks now. You get it every time you log into Google for your Google Gmail. You know, there's two-factor authentication there. You know, everywhere you go, everywhere you turn nowadays, there's a need for two-factor authentication. So
but I also think that it's also for the user themselves a responsibility.
Yeah.
Because yes, it can be mandated by the organization, but so if you want to be safe and you want to have your own data be secured, you need to do the two-factor. And I think most of the websites, almost all of them, have the option. They just don't mandate it yet.
Yeah,
but please,
it's an opt-in one. And I opt in all the time. So
yes,
I think that's the best practice there, is just do that, right?
If you don't want to have an app on your phone, most of them have text message options as well, where you just give your mobile phone number and you get a message. So if you
not
can,
like you have to remember another password or anything like that.
yes,
Fully agree.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about the reputational hit to the usually to the airlines. That is so huge. So we at ARC, we do a lot of research when it comes to this airline misrepresentation issue. And we go on websites like the Better Business Bureau, TripAdvisor, scammer.info, histconsumer.com is another one. But what you see is real life people going over and over, highlighting what their experience it was with some of these websites. And you see it over and over again that they'll say, I'm never going to deal with a travel agent again. I'm going to guarantee that I'm going to go directly to the airline because I can't put up with this type of activity. And so that we take that incredibly seriously. The airlines do as well. Of our reputation is being dragged through the mud, and we didn't even know about it. We had no interaction with the customer, but they think that we somehow are a part of it, and that's something it's hard to get back, right? One's reputation.
Absolutely.
I think our younger generation behind us, like our children, like the debit cards, where we might be credit card oriented, the way that we were raised in credit cards. And I'll watch my children with their mobile apps and digital wallets. They're far more fluent with them than I, and the biometrics that are embedded with those as well too. So I would say hopeful, only hopeful, that some of the resistance might be coming from the older generation that's been traveling by way of old standards, if you will, where our younger generation is more apt to being security minded and doing two-factor authentication using biometrics and things of that nature. So maybe there might be a shift that comes on its own just as these younger travelers come into the system too, because that's where our greatest growth lies in passenger traffic. We're up to about 3.8 billion a year right now. We're projected to get to around 4.2 billion by 2025. And a lot of that is as a result of this younger generation that's coming into an age of travel as well too. So hopefully that'll they will be proponents of that and not adverse to two-factor authentication.
Absolutely. So Tony, I like the fact that you tackled technology, Dave, for a minute and the way of the future, because that's exactly where we want to go on to this next slide, right? It's like what's out there today, what's out there, what could be out there in the future to support us in combating fraud. So you know, we put a few things out here. You know, we know that right now you can go into and find ARC Risk Check to help you mitigate fraud. Of course, there are now solutions within the blockchain via smart contracts. You know, is that feasible? Is that workable? You know, question to the audience: is anybody out here using that or thinking about using that in any way or form? And you know, what does that look like? I'm just going to read through each one of these, and then we can tackle them individually. Digital wallets, embedded biometrics. You just mentioned that you know that most people or the younger generation seems to be picking up on that one, which is safeguarding those transactions. We've got, of course, pay-as-you-go travel. You know, is that a valuable opportunity there? Who's going to ultimately be falling at risk there? And we'll touch on that a little bit more. And then we talk about communication, that collaboration tool, right? And what does that look like? I know in the payments forum we touched on the agency memo manager tool. There was some discussion around that today is a communication between the agent and the airline. You know, what can be done there to expand on that? Who else needs to be part of that communication channel? And what does that look like in the future? You know, it's a couple of questions we're asking ourselves out here, and we'd love to hear from the audience. So if anybody has questions for us, please start throwing those out there for us to respond to. But I'm going to just turn on some general questions here on my colleagues and just ask a little bit about blockchain, smart contracts. Martin, I think you're probably most versed in that area. You want to give us some ideas, or you know, or talk to us about what's happening out there today?
So I think it's really interesting, but to be honest, it's also not something that you could use today. But this is, from my perspective, really the future, because it basically allows a travel agent to have much more control over the moment of payment, what's been paid at what moment in time, when the services has actually been delivered, and it gives the travel agent real control instead of the current situation where you either BSP or direct have to do payments without really knowing where the liability and everything is. So smart contracts are really the way to go, but to be honest, it will take a couple of years, hopefully, and maybe decades, before we're at a point where that will really be part of the day-to-day operation. But basically, we're going there. I'm sure of it, just not fast enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, maybe one of the hurdles around smart contracts, maybe blockchain, is the fact that people are thinking at the same time about cryptocurrencies, right?
Yeah,
and it doesn't need to be, right?
No, and I think that in this situation, it has nothing to do with crypto. The smart contracts are a really nice way to have an agreement between multiple parties, and have that agreement being really fixed and really controllable by a platform. I think the issue here is there's a lot of legacy systems that are currently in play that needs to be part of this before it will actually work. And connecting those legacy systems, that will be the challenge. The smart contract in itself, not that difficult. Getting it embedded, big challenge.
And having it apply all those rules and legacy policies and all of that's probably a heavy lift as well, I would imagine.
Yes, yeah.
And the digital wallet, Tony, I think you touched on that already a little bit, so I don't want to belabor that. But you know, the pay-as-you-go model, who's at risk there? You know, I think it's an interesting concept. Do you want to give us just a little bit of background there for the audience? You know, what does this model look like, and then we can talk about who holds the bag at the end of the day if something goes wrong.
I'm sorry for myself or Martin.
You go ahead, Tony.
And you can fill in behind me, please, Martin. The pay-as-you-go and the buy now, pay later, the adoption of these models in consumer purchasing is just been hockey stick growth. And at the same time, a little concerning because of how fast that they're being adopted, if not fully being thought through by that consumer who has the liability. But one thing that needs to be noted here is that while the settlement might be at 96% of that whole ticket to the merchant, and the rest of it is in processing and helping underwrite that as well too, the merchant is paid for that, and the liability then shifts from the lender to the consumer. So what happens if the consumer does not have the ability to pay on payment number 2 or 3, then it does not make it back to the airline or to the merchant. It stays between that lender and that consumer. And so that's a good thing for our ticketing agencies, if you will, and our airline brands and the OTAs, that they'll get a smaller settlement compared to what they can and should get on full credit card processing, or obviously a ACH withdrawal or a bank withdrawal. But they are able to get that money and have that liability transfer and be dealt with the lender and the consumer from there. Now, Martin, you wanted to add hopefully to that a little bit?
Yeah, well, so indeed, so the risk for the merchant is really low. On a higher level, you could argue that this is not the best way for a consumer to do this, because especially in Europe, the buy now pay later is predominantly used by young people. But that's, from the merchant perspective, it's what you say, the 4%, you lose the 4% on the transaction fee. But other than that, no hassle, no chargeback risk, nothing. So looks great. I think that there's a specific audience for it, and not everybody will use it.
In the pay-as-you-go environment, I mean, we've seen this now during, at the beginning of COVID, where people and agencies whose business model it was or is, the consumer gets, completely, screwed, sorry for the French, but in this environment, because they save up, or rather they pay throughout the year or throughout whatever period for their sort of dream holiday or for a holiday. And what we've seen, just here as COVID started hitting us, is that a lot of customers or travelers rather, were on their trips that they assumed were paid for. So they've gone to the resort, they've got on the airplane, and they assumed everything was paid for, and their booking was made, and they went. And unfortunately, as they were checking, as they check out, the hotel would say, well, we didn't receive the payment from your travel agency or your tour operator. You need to pay us, or you can't leave. So those consumers would have to pay again, either through credit card or other means. And the same with the airline. The airline would say, well, we never received the money, so on your return, if you want to go back home, pay us again. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in this country. So that for me is where smart contracts probably comes in as well, is in this pay-as-you-go environment where you sort of safeguard the consumer a little bit, because that money isn't going to move. No one's holding the money as such. It could go sit in a trust or on a ledger, within the smart contract environment, and the money will flow regardless, because there won't be, or as services provided, right, to the resort, to the airline, to car rental company, whomever is in that value chain, as and when that service is provided. But that was just another unfortunate incident during COVID, where we saw agencies failing, unfortunately, and the downstream impact being on the consumer.
And agencies were at the front line of defense, if you will, with the consumers, and with full visibility and control over the money funds movement and settlement and reporting and such. And that goes back up to one of Martin's earlier statements on the smart contracts and digital ledgers, that in effect they would be able to see that entire transaction lifecycle, what's been reconciled, what has not been yet, what's yet to be reconciled, PNR information, everything of that nature as well too. So we do hope that in these cycles to come, these years to come, that many of these practices that are pardon me, technologies and tools that are already out there on the shelves now will find their way into this marketplace to support it even further than the challenges that we're dealing with now. And that leads me to think about we've had many conversations on this, and the June event too, Doug and Cornelius, and that's the agent memo manager as well too, being a great tool to put all the information and the communications together in there. And I don't know what kind of data you have that shows how many of your cases are in the agent memo manager versus your total amount of cases that you're dealing with. But I imagine that delta that is there is worthy of addressing and educating people so that they adopt that tool a little bit more as well.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for that, Tony. We've got 10 minutes left. We just got a question in, so I want to turn over to the audience real quickly and read out this question we just received. Are there any compliance laws for small travel agencies? It seems like anyone can set up a travel agency if not properly secure. A threat actor could penetrate through vulnerabilities without them knowing or being alerted to. In contrast, a small bank, I don't think, could do this. So I can take it away, and then Doug, you can add, and Martin, and so on. From a state legislation, you need a license to operate. So there is some requirements for an agency to be a travel agency. But unfortunately, what we see is through social media, you get these bogus agencies set up. So your Facebooks, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, your whatever it are, travel agencies or pretend travel agencies saying that they can get you the best deal ever, right? And then you've got bogus websites that are being created, and there's no monitoring there that takes place on the website side. And I don't think the GoDaddies of the world look for your licensing or anything like that when you establish a website. But I know, and then therefore the emphasis is on being an accredited agency, so you can tell your customer, look, I'm a legitimate business. I've got my business license. I'm set up in the state. I've got accredited by ARC or IATA, and due diligence has been done. KYC has been taken care of. Everything is being looked at as part of that process. So, becoming an ARC accredited agency or an IATA accredited agency carries a lot of weight with it. But unfortunately, the other areas, social media, websites, etc., there's no control.
Yeah, unfortunately, we also have instances of people fronting. So people that come in on paper, they go through the background checks. Everything looks super clean, no issues. And only later do we find out that they've been put as the straw man, the straw woman. Behind the scenes is someone doing other nefarious things. So it's not always easy to know up front. You might have an idea, like I'm not sure why they're coming into the industry, but when they're clean as a whistle, just from background checks and everything else, it's why would we keep them out? We might need to monitor them for a while to make sure that everything's on the up and up, but we see this all the time. Yeah, a lot of people coming in looking squeaky clean, but they're not really pulling the strings. They're the Pinocchio. We need to find out who the marionette is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I don't see any more questions coming in. Any final remarks from our team?
I'd just like to say, going back to the collaboration, it's why we have, we make a whole month of webinars. We've got 7 of them. This is, trying to draw in and get collaboration from other actors that are, being impacted in these schemes. You can't fight this alone, not even possible. We're stronger when we're sharing together, we're fighting it together. That is, if you come away with anything, it's like, start to think about who you could partner with in fighting this fraud. You can't take it on alone.
No, I agree, and that's one of the reasons why we created ARC Risk Check. For reporting fraud, for validating your customer. We worked with Perseuss on that, and ultimately it's a tool that was created for the industry. There's no real margins on that tool for Perseuss or for ARC. It's created there to protect not to protect, but rather keep you informed, or help you make informed decisions on transactions that you are concerned about.
And actually making use of the airline data as well to make an informed decision. I think that's very important, because the airlines provide their data in this tool as well for you to make use of.
Yeah, and of course ARC loads our data as well. So from our risk, so there's value in the tool and the data that's being provided there.
Yes.
We've got our contact information up here, and another way to share information with ARC is to send us a stopfraud@arccorp.com email. So if you suspect fraud, send us an email. The team will get back to you. Doug or Christine will respond after doing some investigation on that as well. But ultimately, collaboration is our message, and it has been our go-to for the last 5 years as a way of communication. And during our fraud months, there's always been collaboration, and we continue down that road. Tony, any last remarks?
Thank you, Cornelius, Doug, and Martin as well too. Agree and like to promote further that requirement of collaboration and to use these tools and these data points. Let's face it, we want to book tickets. We have lots of reasons we want to book these tickets to please the customer. We have a financial incentive in there as well too. And therefore there's going to be a tilt or a bias to wanting to book that ticket, but it's imperative that you check it against the databases that are available to you there, because when that ticket kicks back and you've got that full ADM that you're dealing with at that point in time, I think you have to write another 22 tickets just to make up for the one that you lost in the way of all those commissionable events adding up, and it's not worth it. In this day and age, it is not worth it. So I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak with everybody here and lend some of the best practices that we witnessed and learned over the last 10 and 20 years time frame. And I wish us all heaps of success moving forward.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah,
and maybe we can do a little shout out to the organizer of all these events. Is she still here?
Yep, Judy. Yeah, Judy, she's still there.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to, this is Judy, by the way, and thank you for all our attendees that have attended this session today, but also some of our others throughout the month. But a big call out to Cornelius and Doug, because they're the ones that are really the brainchild behind this. And it's really a great series. And all of these recorded sessions will be posted on our website, our corporate website. Just look for training, and it will be on-demand webinars. You can find them all there. Or please reach out to me, jhoward@arccorp.com, and I'll be happy to send you any of those recordings. Also, a big thank you to Tony and Martin, who have been with us, I think, for maybe even the last 5 years with these. So wonderful.
The inception. Yeah.
Wonderful webinar today. Thank you all. And again, thank you for all our attendees. And again, a big thank you to Cornelius and Doug.
Thanks, Judy. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Doug. Have a great weekend, everyone. It's Friday. Enjoy.
Thank you.